This is going to be my first look at a team preview or team profile leading up to the 2023 NFL Draft based upon a suggestion from one of the more dedicated and busy members of my Patreon, Canes411. I chose the Houston Texans, and the title I chose is Reboot because they've really basically rewound time a year and they're rebooting their rebuild this time under D'Amico Ryans. Look, Lovie Smith was fired after only a year as the Texans head coach, and things didn't go well in terms of a record, obviously. Lovie Smith, for those of us that are my age or even older, he's kind of like an iconic name as a defensive coach because of those Bears teams that he was in charge of, and for a lot of other reasons. But look, the Texans a year ago this time, or a year ago post draft, they had drafted some bright young talent, generally on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, Damian Pierce, offensively, John Mechie. Hopefully, I'm saying that name right. But things just didn't work out. Overall, things didn't work out. I guess maybe I should rephrase that. Things weren't working out fast enough for the people in charge in Houston. And then after a thorough process, former Texans linebacker D'Amico Ryans got the job. He left San Francisco, where he'd done a fantastic job as a defensive coordinator, and he not only brings himself his experience returning to Houston where he played, but he brings a great staff with him. In my opinion, the Texans are set up for another potentially great draft in 2023. I'm going to really focus on the first five picks that they've got. I'm going to give you some projections here in a moment. But look, this year they got five picks in the top 75. And that was 1 year after taking the following guys in the first four rounds, which I thought was an impressive group. Derek Stingley, a guy who I think is better than some of the people who provide rating services think that he is. I think Stingley will respond to the system that D'Amico Ryans is going to install. Kenyon Green was wildly inconsistent. Do-it-all safety Jalen Petre, one of my favorite players. I just put a Twitter video out on him the other day. I love watching film of Petre, even in the system they played in last year. John Mechie III, who unfortunately didn't play at all this year. Christian Harris, inside linebacker from Alabama, third-round pick last year by the Texans, who really came on and improved, showed progress and development over the course of the season. And of course, Damian Pierce, the fourth-round running back, that was criminally misassigned in terms of where he should have been drafted. That's first-round talent that they got in the fourth round. All right, let's get to some of the picks that I'm projecting or talking about how they could reboot this franchise from a successful standpoint in 2023. And I think that group from last year has incredible potential. I really do. Christian Harris ended 2022 on a promising note. Like I said, Damian Pierce is incredibly talented. He made an impact immediately. Really dominated certain teams that pride themselves on being physical. Looking back at that game they had against Jacksonville when he pretty much just dominated them. But they have serious needs to address, mainly quarterback and wide receiver. And in my opinions, they have a lot of problems they have problems to address in their front six or front seven of the defense. D-line and inside linebacker. I saw some bad run fits last year. I'm not going to go into it specifically this year, but I'm sure that D'Amico Ryans has seen that and more on film, probably in a far more advanced way than I'm able to address or able to explain. And he'll want a balanced defense and an offense that can score and possess the football. I'm quite sure they will run some version of the 49ers Shanahan system, but also have some advancements based on their personnel. So I'm not going to be specific, to be honest with you, about who exactly they should take. That's why some of these names that you see here are just a pair of names that could be taken or could be available. I do not think the Texans should trade up under any circumstances. I've seen some mock drafts from established NFL analysts, and I just cannot believe that they would advocate the Texans getting rid of some of their draft capital. So if you're Texans fans, you watched this far, obviously you know already how many picks they have after the ones that I'm just showing you. I mean, in round 3, picks 65 and 73. Round 4 and 5, they have one pick apiece. Round 6, 3 draft picks, and round 7, 1. You're talking about 4 picks from 200 on, and then 7 picks from 140 or lower. So 7, the top 140 picks made in this draft will be made by the Texans. Of course, that's a lot of draft capital that you could use to trade up. I don't think they're going to trade up to number 1. I don't think there's a chance they do that. I think they may trade up later on in the draft to get a guy that they really like. D'Amico Ryans and some of his staff apparently stayed in Houston, didn't go to the combine, but certainly sent some representatives. So let's talk about what I think they will end up doing, or what I would recommend that they should do in this reboot. Again, stand pat at number 2. Unless someone offers them a crazy deal to move back to 4 and trade with the Colts, or 7 with the Falcons. I think it's entirely possible if the Bears take a particular player at 1, whoever it is, prior to the incident that was come out in the news a couple of days ago, would have been Jalen Carter. Of course, it's not going to be now. Will Anderson, it could be anyone else. I think the Texans are going to get opportunities to trade back and even provide more draft capital. Of course, they're looking to move on from Cooks as a receiver. In my opinion, at 2, you take whoever's there, Young or Stroud. Now, if they're both there, which theoretically they should be, if the Bears stay at 1 and go ahead and draft, then the Texans have got to make a choice. Which guy do they want? I don't really advocate for either or either one. To be honest with you, I really like C.J. Stroud. I haven't watched as much film of Young, but the competition level that he played at, the numbers that he put up, the plays that he was able to make on film, clearly, show you the type of talent that he is. If you have more concerns about his size versus C.J. Stroud, who's I think 6'3", 215, 220, then C.J. Stroud is your guy. If you value other things, then Young is your guy. To me, it doesn't matter, which one they take. I think they can succeed with both of them, particularly with the offensive system that they're going to install. In my opinion, the Shanahan system they run with the 49ers, which is kind of evolved. I would say it's evolved exponentially in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's definitely evolved since Mike Shanahan Sr., the elder, ran the system, with the Broncos, and then even with a little bit with Washington in 2012, although they ran a lot of pistol option with RG3. At 12, I think it's pretty obvious they're going receiver there. Addison, Johnston. Maybe JSN isn't your cup of tea. Maybe JSN isn't your preferred player at receiver. I understand because there was a lot of slot reps, but you have to keep in mind prior to 2022, he played with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. So, of course, he was going to be in the slot more. In my opinion, it's possible people might look at his film and say, well, we think he can play outside a little more or be that devastating slot threat that so many teams offer out of 11 personnel. Either or would be fine with me as a person who's observing, as a person who's looked at their roster. And look, to be honest with you, I watched a lot of Texans film last year, and their offense had a lot of problems, clearly. I think Stroud and Johnston, or Young and Addison, or Stroud and JSN at 2 and 12 solves a lot of issues. 33 is an interesting case. You got Osiris Torrance, a guard, could be there at 33, but he could obviously be taken early and be off the board. John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota. B.J. Ojulari from LSU, whose brother, of course, plays with the Giants. Any of those guys. Trenton Simpson, the inside linebacker from Clemson. Will McDonald, I think this might be a little soon for him, but he's a talented guy from Iowa State. But it's going to be an interesting transition for McDonald. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure that D'Amico Ryans and those guys are looking for 3-4 outside linebackers like Ojulari and McDonald. Now, McDonald played a lot of 4-eye in an interesting defense that Iowa State played in the Big 12. They played a lot more lighter across the front, and McDonald spent a lot of time playing on the inside, meaning a 4-eye, inside shade of the tackle, whereas in the NFL, he's going to be a 9 technique. He's going to be an outside linebacker. I think D'Amico Ryan's going to bring an even front mentality, similar to what they had in San Francisco, and I think they're going to be drafting DNs, 4-3 DNs, more so than they'll be drafting outside linebackers. With 3 of the top 33 picks, I think they can't go wrong. I really think the Texans can't go wrong. Now, having said that, they can't just draft anybody. They've got to draft for need. It's possible that someone trades up in front of them at 1 and grabs Young. Fine, then take Stroud. It's possible that someone takes Stroud at 1. Fine, then take Young. I don't think you can really go wrong. I don't think there's any chance that Johnston, Addison, and JSN are all gone by 12. So depending on what the Texans think of those guys, they may think of them interchangeably. In my opinion, they need an outside receiver. They need a classic outside receiver. Quentin Johnston from Texas seems to provide that to me. Obviously, you got the issue with the body catching and all of that. I'm not here to address that, to be honest with you specifically. My point is I think the Texans have the ability to address whatever need offensively that they believe they have. Now, moving on from that, 65 and 72. I think you need to look at these two as adaptable, and that's why I didn't put names down. If they don't go receiver at 12 and they go receiver at 33, maybe there's a defensive player at 12 available that they feel like shouldn't be. And they go ahead and they grab a defensive player who's incredibly high level that they can't pass up. That's entirely possible under D'Amico Ryans. Free agent stuff, I think, will be their fill in. I'm not sure that, now, of course, the Texans do have a lot of cap space, and they've got a shit ton of draft picks like we're talking about. D'Amico Ryans has brought a staff that's bringing, a lot of excitement to the fan base, as well it should. I think 65 and 72 is going to be, they got a hit on 212 and 33. Don't get me wrong. There's got to be a high level, production from those three positions. So you would clearly say, hey, Kenyon Green didn't produce a ton last year. We didn't get fantastic statistical production from Derek Stingley. I think Derek Stingley had some games where he played at a high level. I think he had some games where he certainly struggled. He struggled with the height that he was dealing with against the Broncos receivers last year. I did a film study of that game, and I was rooting for him to make more plays than he did. He had some trouble, particularly on intermediate routes, breaking towards the sideline, in breaking routes that looked like it was going to be a vertical, the depth that Stingley was playing at. So I think it's also possible that they go corner. If there's guys like Cam Smith available later than they should be, they may take them. In the system that he's going to install defensively, I think it's possible they go with a bigger, longer corner, someone with a little bit more range. But edge defenders, it wouldn't be surprised me if they focus on 4-3 defensive ends, more so than like Ojulari or McDonald, guys that I would say are 3-4 outside linebackers. The offensive line, with the problems that Green had, it wouldn't surprise me at all if a guy like Whippler from Ohio State, the center, if he's available at 65 or somewhere around there, but I think he should be gone by then off the board. John Michael Schmitz, another one at 33 from Minnesota. I think he could be gone by 33, but he's a center, so you never know how they'll get drafted in the NFL. Another offensive lineman that I think is a possibility in that second round for them is Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee. I think it's based on need, what the Texans coaches think they need, and I think it's also based on the caliber talent that arrives at that pick selection. A guy that I feel like is quite likely to be available for them at 72 is Joe Tippmann, the center from Wisconsin. If I understand it correctly, he spent some time at guard as well, provides a little bit of versatility. And then you have just a shit ton of picks, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, where for me, at least the way I look at the game, I think that they should be looking at the best athlete available, whoever that may be, trying to fill the needs of the team, pick the best athlete available to fit into the structure of the system that they need. I think they're going to have to go receiver twice in this draft. We know that Brandon Cooks is gone, or he should be gone at some point in time. And then who knows what the situation, how John Mechie is going to recover, and if and when he'll be able to offer anything. If you go receiver at 12, I think they've got a double dip at receiver, and I think there's enough talent for the big X type guys later in the draft. Dante Demas is one. A.T. Perry from Wake Forest is another guy that you could be talking about at 104. 73 is going to be the pick where I think the Texans may go receiver that second time, depending on the quality of the first receiver they select, whether they pick a receiver at 12 or 33. I could see a scenario where Johnston or Addison is not available at 12, depending on who the Texans like better as their X. They bypass, they choose not to take a JSN, and they go defensive player and then go receiver at 33. Guys like Jalen Hyatt will be an option, if you ask me. I'm not sure what they're looking for in the San Francisco offense, but they utilize jet sweep stuff often, in San Francisco at least. And so I wonder about a guy like Jalen Hyatt, who's got a lot of speed and and can threaten the edge, somewhat similar to a Christian Watson. The way Christian Watson, even though he's 6'5", and I think Jalen Hyatt's only 6'2", 200 pounds, but Christian Watson can threaten the edge on the jet sweeps, and then also threaten you vertical with the deep balls with his speed. You guys let me know what you think of some of my thoughts here. I'm really focusing on the first three picks. 65 and 72, I think, is where it can put them over the top. If they're able to find those guys at 65 and 72 that can contribute immediately, start offensively or defensively, and give them something. So I'm talking about like a Tariq Woolen who was drafted in the 4th round last year by Seattle. If at 65 and 72 the Texans are able to hit like that, or like they hit with Dameon Pierce in round 4, then I think you're talking about a team that, in my opinion, from the outside, looks like the Detroit Lions a year ago. And the Detroit Lions started 1-6, but by the end of the year, the Detroit Lions are one of the hottest teams in the NFL in terms of teams you would not want to face. And to me, the Texans have a lot of similarities. I think they're going to be physical on defense. I think they're going to get edge guys who can rush the passer like Aiden Hutchinson or, you know, the blessing that James Houston IV became for the Detroit Lions. They've got a head coach who's charismatic, who played for the organization, Dan Campbell versus D'Amico Ryans. Someone who's cut from a little bit of a tough old school cloth, but is also young enough to be able to identify with the players. I know that Campbell's a little older than D'Amico Ryans. I think there's a lot of similarities between the Texans right now and the Lions last year. And this draft, they've got to do what Holmes, the GM, did for the Lions last year. They got to hit 3 or 4 home runs and maybe a couple of them. And that's the good thing about having so many picks in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. Go for the best athlete, the guy with the highest ceiling, even though I don't like ceiling and floor comparisons or designations. Go with the guy with the highest ceiling, maybe the largest size and speed factors at whatever position you need to give you some devastating talent to rely on and help you make big plays where you need them. Because I think defensively, the guys, they have pieces, and they're young pieces. And with all the cap space they had, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them make a move in free agency or trade for someone with all the draft picks they have and Brandon Cooks available. I think it starts with the quarterback here. And whatever guy the Texans have rated the highest, them taking at 2, presuming that the Bears don't trade out, it's entirely possible that all of us are wrong, that many evaluators are wrong and think the Colts are going to trade up, the Raiders or someone else is going to trade up. It's entirely possible that some of those teams look at Young, Stroud, Will Levis as I'd be comfortable taking him at either one at 4. I'd be comfortable taking either one at 7 because I don't think the Seahawks are taking a quarterback, but they very well might. I don't think the Lions are taking a quarterback at 6, even though Dan Campbell has come out and said that they would be interested in a quarterback to develop behind Jared Goff. You guys let me know what you think of my thoughts. I didn't address the free agency piece here. Again, this was a suggestion by someone in my Patreon. Most of the people in my Patreon are Ravens fans because it's my team. That's a team that I focus on a lot. But last year I did a shit ton of video on Derek Stingley, on Jalen Petre, guys that I thought were tremendous talents. I have a Christian Harris film study, coming out at some point before the draft. Got about 60, 65 plays that I used to break down and talk about his film. He surprised me, to be honest with you. I did not expect him to play as well in his rookie season as he did, just based on the film of him that I saw at Alabama. I think the Texans could go linebacker again. I just don't think it's going to be in the first 33. Even though I have Trenton Simpson's name, shown up here on the screen at 33, in my opinion, I think they're going offense 2 of these first 3 picks. And when I say offense, I mean quarterback and receiver. And then I think whether it's 12, if at 12 they have some type of talent available to select that's just undisputably great and they cannot pass up, then they'll do so and everything will be mixed and matched. And some of the names that I put here won't be selected. And so that changes their next pick because now they've got to address, let's say, receiver at 33 if they took a defensive player at 12 who slid for whatever reason. It's fun for me to look at draft capital, draft positioning, and how many picks a team has. And in this case, the Texans have so many draft picks, so much cap space, and such an exciting staff that they brought there to Houston with D'Amico Ryans. It's very easy for me to look at them and say they appear similar to last year's Lions, like I said. But the big question mark is, who do they take at quarterback? How effective is that player assimilating, adapting to the system quickly, and then being able to produce in 2023 at a level that can help them win 8, 9, 10 football games? Because that's got to be the goal. The goal has got to be for them to draft across the board, but especially at quarterback, well enough that they can win and compete legitimately in 8, 9, 10 football games and put themselves in a position where maybe they're contending for a playoff spot last year. That may sound ridiculous even to some Texans fans listening, but rewind time a year, and I think you would rewind time less than a year. Week 8 of the 2022 NFL season, when the Lions are sitting there at 1-6, and they don't give in, and they push the pedal and just start to execute better offensively, not turn the football over, not get some of the silly holding or almost delay calls that their offense got when it wasn't smooth early in the year. In my opinion, Stroud, young, gives them a chance to start off the year, 3-4, maybe even 2-5. I haven't even looked at their schedule, but be able to recover from it when the offense gets sharper and starts to be able to execute at a higher level, and the defense provides them with enough big plays. I think D'Amico Ryans brings the type of mentality that they can dig themselves out of a hole starting now by drafting well, by bringing in free agents or trading for people. But I think he also has the type of personality and demeanor, and probably brought coaches with him as well, who could dig themselves out of a hole in week 6 or 7 or 8 of the NFL season. The Lions were my most interesting story last year personally. The teams that I watched a lot of film of, and I'm saying now that I think if the Texans draft well, they could put themselves in the same position in 2023. You guys, let me know what you think of my Houston Texans reboot video, kind of breaking down where I think they might go in the draft. 65 and 72 is or 73, excuse me, I said 72 earlier. 65 and 73 is the positions where I think they've got to hit home runs and find that fourth and fifth player that can really contribute right now and kind of push this roster over the top. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Texans fans might enjoy this video, please consider sharing a link on social media to help this video get more reach.